Hello YouTube, in this video I'm going to tell you how you should be programming as an intermediate. Keep in mind this is from my perspective and this is from an hypertrophy perspective. So I'm speaking as a bodybuilder. So I'm talking to people who want their body to look better and who don't really worry about the functions of the body. So strength and athleticism are not what we are in mind when we're talking about intermediates here. First off, let's define quickly what is an intermediate, at least in the sense of bodybuilding. For me, an intermediate is someone who has intimate knowledge of compound movements that cover the entire body, has had experience with variations of the compound movements, and have had at least some inkling of contact with isolation movement and exercises. So my definition already diverged a ton from the powerlifting definition. Because from a powerlifting standpoint, most novice programs don't have any variations, they don't have any accessory and no isolation whatsoever. So you can literally become intermediate in powerlifting doing only bench, squat, and deadlift. I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. It's not my sport, or at least it used to be, but it's not anymore. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Because from a strength perspective, if you're going to be tested on three arbitrary lifts, you need to be strong in these three lifts. That's all there is to it. And you can become strong on them just doing them again and again. After that, you will have to introduce variations and work on your weak points. But when you're a novice, you don't need that. But if you are interested in physique, you shouldn't be focusing and following the mindset and standpoints of powerlifters because they don't care about their physique for the most part, they care about strength. So, what I say you should do, as I explained in my video about novices, is get comfortable with a few compound movements that you really like doing and that you feel comfortable with in the sense that they agree with your body and with your leverages. Use variations of these to pack on more volume without having to repeat the same compound movements with the same stance again and again and again, and do isolation. So when you finally are ready as a novice to be an intermediate in bodybuilding, what does that mean? It means that you have a strong idea of what you want your body to look like, because you've had enough hypertrophy gains that you see where your body is heading, and you now have the ability to decide in which direction you want to take it. It doesn't mean that you have the ability to dictate in which way your body is going to take it. That's for advanced bodybuilders. But you have at least a solid grasp of what you want. And in a sense, it's that freedom that I enjoy about bodybuilding. You don't have to do the certain types of lifts you don't want to do. You don't have to abide by certain standards. You can do what you want as long as it fits your goals. And that's the first introduction to that notion of freedom when you finally are intermediate. And I'm going to make videos about it. Intermediate for me is not linked to the amount of weight you can lift. It's not linked to the size of your muscles. It's a mindset. Some people will become intermediates much faster because they're going to emancipate themselves much faster. Some people will need to be babied, which is nothing negative about that. It's a personality trait, longer until they're comfortable. For me, you become an intermediate the day you say, you know what? Let me change my program. Let me see if I can make it better. Let me see if it can fit my goals better. That's when you bloom. That's when you realize that you can do it for yourself. You don't need someone to write a program for you. You don't need to follow someone else's program. My novice program that you see is there to basically launch you into the gorgeous landscape of self-programming, whatever you want to call it, in proper English. It doesn't mean that you have to program for yourself, but you should start tinkling a bit with your programs when you get to that point. You should also be comfortable with volume training, meaning that I don't care how much weight you lift, but at the end of your workout, I should see the tonnage that you lift and be like, okay, that was an actually rough workout. This will not be possible to do if you A, don't do enough reps and sets, or B, stay within weights that are not challenging for you. So as I say, I will make a video dedicated to that, I think, because it's very important. You need to stay into an intensity window that's going to be not junk volume, so not too easy, and not junk volume so that it's too hard and your form is terrible. And as I said in the comment, it's usually between 70 and 90% of your 1 rep max, but I don't like percentages. I will explain that in the video as well. So that's what I think is an intermediate for bodybuilding purposes. How do you program them? Well, one thing you can do is take the program you are using as a novice and just up the volume. Up the volume, up the frequency. You can add variations to lifts that you like. You can change the isolation movements. But all of that is going to have to be tailored around what you want to look like. If your goal is to have massive arms, I better see a ton of curls and skull crushers in your program. That's just what makes sense. Just like an intermediate in powerlifting who has a poverty bench, I better see high frequency bench in your program because it's tailored towards your goals. When you're in an intermediate in bodybuilding is also the period of time where you should start thinking about how your diet is going to play a role with your training, because as a novice you can really, unless you are a really skinny person or a really overweight person, if you're just average, you don't really have to care about what you eat, you just have to watch your proteins a bit. Once you get into an intermediate stage, just sculpting the body is not going to be enough. You need to make sure that in the kitchen, you don't kill all of your efforts. So if you want to look a little bit drier, you're going to have to play around with your calories. If you want to be a bit fluffier, you're going to have to eat more, etc. So, and I think that's also true with powerlifting in a sense. Intermediates, the intermediate stage is when you start realizing that there is more to lifting than just lifting. There's much more. There is your diet and there's your recovery. As far as recovery goes, it's also when you start realizing that certain things should be controlled. So your alcohol consumption, the amount of hours you sleep, the stress you endure, all of these are going to damage your gains, so you need to keep them in check if you want to achieve your goals. As far as the spiritual side, because we've only been talking about body, I already touched about it a bit. You become an intermediate when you free yourself from limitations, meaning that when I program for novices, when I give advice to novices, I still keep them within a little box because I know that it feels good to have the little box and you're not afraid and someone is taking care of you and thinking for you. Being an intermediate is not being thrown out of the box and not being prepared. As a novice, you should have been able to peer through the box, being able to see what was going on, and eventually you break the box and you're outside as an intermediate out of your own volition because you want to. And experience things and find what works for you. And this is the first step of a journey that is basically up a mountain that will last years and years. I still discover things that work for me. I still go back on things that don't work for me, that I give up on, that I've been doing for years. But for me, and I'm going to end with that, you really start being a part of that lifting community and bodybuilding community and family when you're an intermediate, because I'm pulling that number completely out of thin air, but I think I'm on the nose on it, and I will be making videos about it. 95% of people give up on lifting weights when they move from novice to intermediate. And I put the blame on some of powerlifting's finest novice programs that rush progression so much that when the lifters plateau, they quit. And I've seen it so many times. But I'll make a video about it. It'll be nice drama. As far as what I said goes, because most people give up before they even step into what being an intermediate is, If you made it that far, in my opinion, you are going to be in it forever. Unless something dramatic happens, or if you get demoralized, which a ton of intermediate become demoralized because they can never make any progress, you are going to be here for a long time. Unless you're a genetic freak, the time you spend being an intermediate is going to be relatively long. It's going to be, of course, much longer than the time you spend being a novice. And the more you progress, the more time you will spend in those phases. But because we live in the moment, being an intermediate is when you open your eyes and you start consuming resources and data from all of the places. Because when you are a novice, you can do everything with your eyes closed and it works. As an intermediate, you become aware of your existence and of your evolution within what it means to be lifting and what it means to be bodybuilding. And just to finish, to go back to something I just said so I don't forget, this is what it will look like for powerlifters. You'll be a novice this long, an intermediate this long, an advanced lifter this long, and an elite if you're a genetic freak, so I'm not going to talk about that. For bodybuilders, I think that it should be much longer, being a novice much longer, but then you're going to be an intermediate less time, and you're going to be advanced forever. And that is because you're going to be focusing on volume much earlier than most powerlifters. But that's something I want to discuss more in another video. I think the distinction is also that if you extend the time you spent as a novice, the chances of you quitting when you become an intermediate is much reduced. But again, that's for the video. So thank you for watching. This was a preface to a video where I will be talking in details about more intermediate topics. I hope this was helpful, and please leave any comments that you think can be pertinent and that we can discuss down there. Thank you so much. Have a good day.